When walking the path of awareness, one must learn that not every gift carries kindness and not every smile carries peace. There are objects that enter our lives not as blessings, but as silent carriers of confusion, heaviness, and unseen disturbance. Today's teaching is simple yet powerful. If someone gifts you something and your heart feels uneasy, your mind becomes restless, or your surroundings feel strangely disturbed afterward, do not ignore it. Do not justify it. Do not keep it. Let it go. There are certain items that are often given with hidden intention, objects tied with jealousy, control, emotional manipulation, or unresolved negativity. Sometimes the giver themselves may not even be fully aware of what they are transferring. But energy does not lie. What is carried within intention will always follow the object. A gift should bring lightness, gratitude, and peace. But when a gift brings repeated misfortune, constant arguments in the home, disturbed sleep, sudden emotional imbalance, or a feeling of pressure in the atmosphere, this is not ordinary coincidence. It is a sign to pause and observe deeply. There are objects that absorb and carry emotional residue. Things that have been handled in anger, obsession, sorrow, or resentment do not become neutral just because they are wrapped in beautiful paper. If such an item enters your space, it becomes part of your environment, and your environment begins to respond to it. A mindful person does not live in fear but in awareness. Awareness means noticing patterns. If after receiving a particular object your peace repeatedly breaks, your thoughts become heavier, or your relationships begin to strain without reason, then you must not ignore what life is showing you. Many people make the mistake of attachment. They say it was a gift, I cannot throw it away. But ask yourself, what is more valuable? The object or your peace of mind? No possession is worth the disturbance of your inner calm. No item is worth the weakening of your energy, your focus, or your emotional stability. The wise one understands that non-attachment is not disrespect, it is protection of clarity. There are also gifts that come with expectations. They are not freely given, they are investments in control. Such gifts often carry invisible strings of expectations of loyalty, obedience, emotional debt, or silent influence over your decisions. At first they appear generous, but slowly they begin to weigh upon your freedom. When you feel bound instead of blessed, when a gift begins to feel like a chain instead of joy, then wisdom calls for release. Throwing something away is not an act of anger. It is an act of cleansing. Just as one would not allow spoiled food in the home, one should not allow spoiled intention in one's living space. Physical cleanliness and energetic clarity go hand in hand. Now understand this deeply. It is not about superstition, but about sensitivity. Human beings are deeply influenced by environment, suggestion, and emotional association. If an object constantly reminds you of discomfort, distrust, or confusion, your mind will continue to relive that feeling every time you see it. Over time, this shapes your mood, your decisions, and even your relationships. Freedom begins when you stop holding on to things out of guilt. If you ever receive a gift that feels heavy instead of light, observe it carefully. Place it away for a few days. Notice your inner state. If peace returns when it is not around, that is already a message. And if disturbance increases when it is present, that is also a message. Wisdom is not about reacting blindly, it is about responding clearly. And sometimes the clearest response is simple: let it go. You do not need rituals of fear. You do not need drama. A calm decision is enough. Remove it from your space. Clean your environment. Refresh your surroundings, open your windows, allow natural light and air to reset what was disturbed. And most importantly, do not carry emotional guilt. You are not rejecting a person, you are releasing an influence that does not support your well-being. There is also a deeper layer to this understanding. Life itself is always communicating through subtle signals. When something repeatedly feels wrong, life is not punishing you, it is guiding you. But guidance only works when you listen. Many people suffer not because they lack strength, but because they ignore small signs until they become large disturbances. Awareness saves energy. Awareness protects peace. So if someone gifts you something and your intuition feels unsettled, do not dismiss it as imagination. The inner sense is often more perceptive than logic alone. Be respectful but be aware. Be kind but be clear. Be grateful but also be wise. In the end, your space is your responsibility. Your peace is your responsibility. Your energy is your responsibility. And anything, no matter how beautiful, expensive, or meaningful it may appear, must never be allowed to disturb that responsibility. So remember this teaching: if a gift brings peace, keep it with gratitude. If a gift brings disturbance, release it without fear. And in that simple act, you protect not only your home, but your mind, your heart, and your path forward. Not every gift carries positive intention. Some gifts may come with hidden emotions, negative energy, or unhealthy intentions, so awareness is important. When a person begins to walk a more aware and mindful path in life, they begin to cultivate a greater sense of self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-awareness. They slowly start to notice that not everything entering their life carries the same kind of energy. Some things feel light, peaceful, and comforting from the very beginning, while others, even if they appear beautiful or valuable on the outside, carry a strange heaviness that cannot easily be explained. One of the most overlooked areas where this happens is in the form of gifts. A gift is usually seen as a symbol of love, respect, or connection between two people, but not every gift is born from pure intention. Sometimes behind the smile of giving there can be emotions like jealousy, control, expectation, or even unresolved inner conflict. And these emotions, whether spoken or unspoken, can become attached to the object being given. A wise person does not live in fear of objects, but they do remain sensitive to how their inner world responds to external influences. If something enters your space and your mind repeatedly feels uneasy without any clear reason, it is important not to dismiss that feeling immediately. Human intuition is often subtle but powerful. It speaks through discomfort, restlessness, or sudden emotional imbalance. When a gifted object becomes associated with argument, disturbed sleep, frequent tension, or a shift in the overall atmosphere of the home, it is not always just coincidence. It may simply be that the mind is reacting to something it cannot fully understand, yet still deeply feels. Every physical object in our surroundings becomes part of our environment, and our environment shapes our thoughts, emotions, and behavior more than we realize. The home is not just a physical structure, it is a reflection of the energy we allow inside it. When something consistently disturbs that harmony, it is worth observing carefully rather than ignoring. Many people hold on to gifts out of guilt or obligation, thinking that removing them would be disrespectful or unkind. However, true respect does not require self-neglect. It is possible to honor the giver while still protecting your own mental peace and emotional stability. There is also a deeper psychological truth here. The human mind forms associations very quickly. If a certain object is present during times of stress or emotional pain, the mind begins to link that object with those feelings. Later, even the sight of it can trigger similar emotions again and again. Over time, this creates a cycle where peace becomes harder to maintain simply because of repeated mental association. In such cases, removing the object is not superstition, but a form of emotional hygiene. Just as we clean our bodies and our homes, we must also clean our mental and emotional space from things that repeatedly disrupt balance. Letting go of something does not mean anger or rejection. It can simply mean understanding that not everything is meant to stay in your life permanently. Some things enter to teach awareness, and once that lesson is understood, their purpose is complete. Holding on to them beyond that point only continues unnecessary disturbance. A peaceful life is built through small conscious choices made repeatedly. One of those choices is knowing when something no longer supports your well-being and having the courage to release it without fear or guilt. In the end, the most important guidance is simple. Trust your inner state. If something consistently brings calmness, it is aligned with you. If something repeatedly disturbs your peace, it deserves careful reconsideration. Your mental clarity, emotional balance, and inner stability are far more valuable than any object that threatens them. Your inner peace is the main indicator. If an object causes discomfort, restlessness, or emotional disturbance, it may not be suitable to keep. When we look more deeply into human life, we begin to understand that peace is not only affected by our thoughts and actions, but also by the subtle influence of the environment we surround ourselves with. Every person carries a certain emotional frequency, and this frequency is expressed not just through words, but also through objects they touch, use, or give away. A gift, in its purest form, is meant to be a symbol of goodwill, appreciation, or connection. Yet life is not always so simple. Human emotions are layered, and sometimes what is offered as a gift may carry mixed intentions beneath its surface. There are moments when something enters our life and appears completely harmless, even beautiful, but over time it begins to feel slightly out of place. It may not show its effect immediately, but slowly the atmosphere around us starts to shift. Conversations may become more tense, the mind may feel more restless, or a sense of heaviness may settle in without any clear reason. Many people ignore these subtle signs because they try to rely only on logic, but not everything in life is understood through logic alone. Some experiences are understood through awareness, feeling, and observation. When a gifted object is repeatedly present during emotional disturbance, the mind starts forming a connection between the two. This is a natural psychological process. The mind remembers patterns and builds associations. So even if the object itself is neutral, the emotional experiences attached to it can make it feel heavy or uncomfortable over time. This is why awareness is important. It is not about blaming the object or fearing it, but about understanding how deeply our inner state is influenced by what surrounds us. There is also another layer to this understanding. Sometimes people give gifts with expectations attached. These expectations may not always be spoken clearly, but they exist in subtle forms such as emotional pressure, hidden demands, or silent control. When such energy is attached to a gift, it can create a feeling of being emotionally bound. Instead of feeling free, the receiver may feel obligated or mentally burdened. Over time, this can affect personal decisions, emotional clarity, and even relationships with others. A mindful person learns to observe these patterns without panic or superstition. The goal is not to live in fear of objects, but to maintain inner balance. If something consistently disturbs your peace, it is a sign that deserves attention. Ignoring it repeatedly can lead to prolonged discomfort, not because of the object itself, but because of the emotional weight the mind has assigned to it. In such cases, releasing the object from your space becomes an act of self-care rather than rejection. Letting go is often misunderstood. Many people think it is disrespectful or ungrateful, but in truth it is an essential part of maintaining emotional clarity. Gratitude can remain in the heart even when physical attachment is released. You can appreciate the intention of a gift while still recognizing that its presence does not support your well-being. This balance between gratitude and awareness is what creates emotional maturity. Life constantly communicates with us through subtle signs. When something repeatedly disturbs your calm state, it is not always a coincidence. It may simply be life encouraging you to observe more carefully. Inner peace is one of the most valuable states a person can have, and anything that continuously disrupts it should be examined with honesty and clarity. In the end, wisdom is not about reacting with fear, but responding with understanding. If something brings peace, it naturally belongs in your space. If something consistently brings discomfort, it is wise to reconsider its place in your life. The ability to make this distinction clearly is what protects your mental harmony, emotional strength, and overall well-being. Energy and environment are deeply connected. Objects can influence your mental state and home atmosphere based on emotional or energetic associations. When a person begins to observe life with deeper awareness, they slowly realize that peace is not something that depends only on external success or failure, but on the subtle balance between inner state and outer environment. Everything we surround ourselves with, whether people, thoughts, or physical objects, contributes in some way to our emotional condition. Among these influences, gifts are often considered harmless and positive. Yet even a gift can carry layers of unseen emotional energy depending on the intention behind it and the connection between the giver and the receiver. At first glance, a gift appears to be nothing more than an object exchanged between two people, but in reality it often carries emotional history. The person giving it may be influenced by love, gratitude, expectation, jealousy, attachment, or even unresolved inner conflict. These emotions do not disappear simply because the object changes hands. Instead, they may become associated with the object itself in the perception of the receiver. While not every gift has negative energy, awareness helps us understand that emotional influence can exist in subtle forms that are not immediately visible. Many people experience situations where everything feels normal until a certain object enters their space. After that, they begin noticing small but consistent changes in their emotional or mental state. There may be increased irritability, unexplained tension in relationships, disturbed sleep, or a general feeling of heaviness in the home environment. While logic may try to dismiss these experiences as coincidence, human awareness often senses patterns before they can be fully explained. The mind is extremely sensitive to association, and once it links a particular object with repeated emotional disturbance, that connection becomes stronger over time. This does not mean that objects themselves have power in a mystical sense, but rather that human perception gives them meaning based on experience. If a gifted item is present during moments of stress or emotional imbalance, the mind begins to record it as part of that emotional memory. Later, even the sight of that object can trigger similar feelings again. This is why some items feel comforting while others feel uncomfortable, even if there is no logical reason behind the difference. It is the mind's way of organizing emotional experience through association. In addition to emotional association, there is also the aspect of expectation that sometimes comes with gifts. Not all giving is completely free. Some gifts carry silent expectations, such as loyalty, dependence, emotional obligation, or influence over decisions. When a person unconsciously feels bound by such expectations, their inner freedom begins to feel restricted. Over time, this can create mental pressure that is difficult to identify directly but is still deeply felt. Awareness helps a person recognize when generosity is truly free and when it carries subtle conditions attached. A mindful individual does not rush to fear or superstition, but instead observes patterns with calm clarity. The goal is not to assume negativity in everything, but to protect inner balance by noticing when something repeatedly disturbs peace. Emotional well-being is not fragile, but it is sensitive. Just as we take care of physical cleanliness, mental and emotional environments also require care. If something consistently disrupts harmony, it deserves thoughtful reflection rather than blind attachment. Letting go of an object is often misunderstood as rejection or ingratitude, but in reality, it can be an act of emotional maturity. Gratitude exists in the heart, not in the possession of things. A person can respect the intention behind a gift while still acknowledging that its presence no longer supports their mental or emotional clarity. This distinction is important because it allows one to remain kind without sacrificing inner peace. Life continuously communicates through subtle signals, but these signals are only understood when a person slows down and pays attention. When something repeatedly disturbs your calm state, it is not necessarily a punishment or superstition, but possibly a reminder to observe your environment more carefully. Peace is one of the most valuable states of human existence, and anything that consistently disturbs it deserves honest attention. In the end, wisdom lies in clarity rather than fear. If something brings peace, it naturally aligns with your life. If something repeatedly brings disturbance, it is wise to reconsider its place. The ability to make this distinction calmly and without emotional confusion is what protects inner stability, strengthens awareness, and supports a more balanced way of living. Attachment should not override well-being. Keeping something just because it was a gift is not necessary if it disturbs your peace or stability. As a person becomes more observant of life, they begin to understand that inner peace is not something that depends only on external circumstances, but also on the subtle influences that enter their personal space. Every human being is connected not only through words and actions, but also through emotional energy that is often expressed indirectly. One of the most common yet least understood expressions of this energy is found in gifts. A gift is usually seen as a positive gesture, a symbol of care or respect. However, life is more complex than appearances, and even something given with a smile can carry layers of emotion that are not immediately visible. When an object is given from one person to another, it does not come alone in a purely physical sense. It often carries the emotional state of the giver at the moment it was given. That emotional state may include love, but it may also include expectation, sadness, jealousy, control, or unresolved conflict. These feelings do not simply vanish when the object changes hands. Instead, they can become associated with the object in the mind of the receiver. This is why some gifts bring comfort, while others, even without any clear reason, begin to feel heavy or unsettling over time. A sensitive and aware individual may notice that after receiving certain items, their mental state begins to shift in subtle ways. There may be unexplained restlessness, a feeling of discomfort in the home environment, or small but repeated disturbances in emotional balance. While it is easy to dismiss these experiences as coincidence, human perception is highly responsive to patterns. The mind continuously records associations, and when a particular object is present during moments of emotional disturbance, it gradually becomes linked to that experience. Over time, this association strengthens. Even if the object itself has no inherent negative quality, the mind begins to respond to it based on memory and emotional conditioning. This is not superstition, but a natural psychological process. The human mind learns through repetition, and whatever is repeatedly present during emotional imbalance becomes a trigger for that same feeling in the future. This is why awareness of one's surroundings is an important part of maintaining emotional stability. There is also another aspect to consider, which is the subtle pressure that sometimes comes with gifts. Not all giving is entirely free of expectation. Some gifts carry unspoken emotional demands, such as the expectation of loyalty, closeness, or influence over decisions. When a person senses, even unconsciously, that they are emotionally bound by something they received, it can create a quiet form of inner tension. This tension may not always be easy to identify, but it can slowly affect clarity of thought and emotional freedom. A wise person does not react with fear or assumptions, but with observation. The goal is not to blame objects or people, but to understand how deeply the mind is influenced by its environment. If something repeatedly disturbs peace, it deserves attention. Ignoring it does not make the disturbance disappear, it only allows it to continue unnoticed. Letting go of an object is not an act of disrespect. It is an act of emotional clarity. Gratitude can remain in the heart even when physical attachment is released. A person can appreciate the intention behind a gift while still recognizing that its presence does not support their well-being. This understanding allows one to remain kind without compromising inner balance. In the end, wisdom is found in awareness. When something brings peace, it is aligned with you. When something repeatedly disturbs that peace, it is a signal to reflect. The ability to recognize this difference calmly and without fear is what protects mental clarity, emotional strength, and overall harmony in life. Letting go is an act of wisdom, not disrespect. Removing disturbing items is about protecting your clarity, mental balance, and personal space, not rejecting the giver. As awareness deepens within a person, life begins to appear less random and more connected through subtle patterns. Inner peace is no longer seen as something that depends only on success, relationships, or material comfort, but also on the quality of energy that surrounds one's daily environment. Everything that enters our space carries some form of influence, whether we consciously recognize it or not. Among these influences, gifts are often considered harmless and positive, yet their impact can sometimes be more complex than expected. A gift is usually thought of as a simple gesture of kindness, a symbol of appreciation or affection between two people. However, behind every action lies an emotional state. The person giving a gift is not emotionally neutral. They may be carrying feelings such as love, gratitude, expectation, jealousy, sadness, or even unresolved tension. When an object is transferred from one person to another, it does not only carry physical form but also carries the person's thoughts, feelings, and experiences, but also becomes associated with the emotional condition in which it was given. This is why some gifts bring a sense of warmth and comfort, while others may gradually feel uncomfortable or heavy without any obvious reason. Over time, a sensitive person may begin to notice that certain objects seem to coincide with changes in their emotional environment. There may be a subtle increase in restlessness, misunderstandings within relationships, or a general feeling that the atmosphere of the home has become less peaceful. These experiences are often dismissed as coincidence, yet the human mind is highly attuned to association. It constantly links objects, places, and experiences with emotional states, even when we are not consciously aware of it. When a gifted item is repeatedly present during stressful or emotional moments, the mind begins to connect it with those experiences. This psychological association becomes stronger with repetition. An object that was once neutral can gradually become a trigger for certain emotional responses simply because of what was experienced around it. For example, if a person frequently feels anxious or disturbed while a particular item is present, the mind begins to store that object as part of the emotional pattern. Later, even the sight of it can evoke similar feelings. This is not superstition, but a natural function of memory and emotional conditioning. In addition to emotional association, there is also the subtle influence of expectation. Some gifts are not entirely free from emotional conditions. They may carry silent expectations of closeness, loyalty, control, or emotional obligation. When a person feels, even unconsciously, that they are bound by something they received, it can create inner pressure. This pressure may not always be visible on the surface, but it can slowly affect decision-making, emotional clarity, and personal freedom. Over time, this can make a person feel mentally restricted without fully understanding why. A mindful individual does not rush to fear or assume negativity, but instead observes life with calm awareness. The purpose is not to judge objects or people, but to understand how deeply the mind responds to its surroundings. If something repeatedly disturbs inner peace, it is a signal that deserves attention. Ignoring such signals does not resolve the disturbance, it only allows it to continue influencing the mind quietly in the background. Letting go of an object should not be misunderstood as disrespect or ingratitude. True gratitude exists within the heart and is not dependent on physical possession. A person can appreciate the intention behind a gift while still recognizing that its presence no longer supports emotional balance. This distinction is important because it allows kindness and self-respect to exist together without conflict. In the end, wisdom lies in awareness rather than fear. Life communicates through subtle changes in feeling, atmosphere, and perception. When something consistently brings peace, it aligns naturally with your life. When something repeatedly disturbs that peace, it is a gentle reminder to reflect and observe. The ability to recognize this difference clearly is what protects inner harmony, emotional strength, and long-term mental clarity.